O my God, O my God, I am a servant attracted to thee, humbly drawing near to the door of thy oneness and supplicating the kingdom of thy mercy. O my God, permit me to be entirely thine, occupied only with the thoughts of thee, inflamed by the fire of thy love, and separated from all except thee, so that I may work in thy cause, spread thy wisdom, transmit thy knowledge, and impart the joy of knowing thee. O my God, I am a flame lighted by the hands of thy power. Let not that flame be quenched by the winds of trials. Increase my love for thee, my ardor for the beauty of thy oneness. Kindle the fire that burns in me in the Sinai of thy singleness, and awaken the eternal life that is latent in me through thy bounty and grace. Thou art a protector, watcher, the compassionate, and the merciful. Abdu'l-Bahá.
Thank you very much. All right. Okay, friends, greetings to everybody again. All right, so why don't we go back just for a few seconds and come back to Munira Khanum when she was talking to Lady Bloomfield. Now, let me just read to you something she said, and then we'll take it from there. There are pages 87 and 89. Now, she said, she was telling her, I already mentioned the story of her wedding, you know, which is kind of touching, you know, but she said there was no cake, she said. Can you imagine? We all have cakes for weddings, you know, and Abdu'l-Bahá and Munira Khanum, they have no cake. I mean, it's kind of sad. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world. It happens to him. No cake, she says. Just remember that. Only cups of tea. And there were no decorations. All right, so you get the picture. Now, but before that paragraph, she says the following. She says, you have known him in his later years, but then in his youth, in the youth of his beauty and manly vigor, with his unfailing love, his kindness, his cheerfulness, his sense of humor, his untiring consideration for everybody, he was marvelous, without equal, surely in all the earth. All right? Kind of interesting, huh? This is the wife speaking to her young husband. Now, let me say the second thing that she said. This is the page before, but it's interesting. She says, when she was trying to explain how she was preparing her room, you know, where she was going to live in the house of Abud, you know, she says that at one point, says, in a few days, I went to stay at the house of Mirza Musa, the brother of Baha'u'llah. And here I remained for 6 months. And then she says, my brother and I used to stand at the window and watch Abbas Effendi swimming. I don't think we talk too much about Abdu'l-Bahá swimming, but I mean, Jesus, Abdu'l-Bahá did a lot of things. He was swimming, such a strong and graceful swimmer. Now, just think of that, okay? When you think of Abdu'l-Bahá, think of Abdu'l-Bahá as a strong and graceful swimmer. Now, I don't know when that was exactly. I mean, I don't know the years 1870, but this is Abdu'l-Bahá at that time. You know this picture, right? Must be close to that period, all right? Now, we don't think of Abdu'l-Bahá at that time often because when we think of Abdu'l-Bahá, we think of Abdu'l-Bahá basically in Egypt, in Europe, the States, Paris, London, and he was a beard, white beard, and all that. That's Abdu'l-Bahá. But we don't think of Abdu'l-Bahá when he was young. Now, so the funny thing is, Abdu'l-Bahá wrote a book, I think it was 1875. And you know the book, of course, that we don't read often. Maybe you don't read, maybe I don't read, maybe you read it. It's called The Secret of Divine Civilization. Now, he was only 31 years old. Excuse me, 31. So, I mean, I read the book. It's not, I mean, it's not hard book to read. It's just that it doesn't read like Abdu'l-Bahá. It doesn't read like you're reading Abdu'l-Bahá. Because what we are used to reading Abdu'l-Bahá in all the talks he gave in London and the promulgation of world peace, that kind of language, Abdu'l-Bahá. This, I mean, I don't want to say this is a thesis, like a doctoral thesis, but, I mean, the kinds of things Abdu'l-Bahá says, he's addressing the people of Persia, probably also the authorities. And throughout the book, I mean, I'm not going to be able to give any deep analysis on this. I'm going to read some extracts from you. Hopefully you get a kick out of this and you probably do some digging yourself and see how that helps you understanding the comments he makes to try to basically speak about the impact of religion for the world, that how the world needs religion, that people have misunderstood what religion is about. They think they can actually have peace and social order without religion. And he makes a strong case for that, for the impact of religion in the world. And it's addressed to the people of Persia. And he promised, because this was 1875, that he was going to do a second volume, because at the time when he wrote it, apparently the Shah of Iran at that time, I don't remember the name exactly, who that Shah was, but anyway, it's very progressive. And it's amazing that he was trying to change the world, He tried. I don't know, that didn't happen, I guess. So Abdu'l-Bahá was really excited and tried to really give them his thinking without giving his name. Abdu'l-Bahá did not say, I, Abdu'l-Bahá, son of Baha'u'llah, is talking to you. He is writing as he was, I guess, a Muslim, because he quotes the Quran throughout the book. All the footnotes here are from the Quran. He is trying to help his countrymen, his country, telling them, you guys, you were at the top of the world. You were like the inventor of everything under the sun at the time of Siruz and way back when. And now you're in the hands of basically kind of very strange, more or less incompetent people that are not doing their job. And you've got to wake up. You've got to wake up and you've got to somehow change things. You have to educate people. You have to really think of your people, your citizens. And you can't say that looking at the West and trying to copy some of the things they have done, that's against our belief. It doesn't make any sense. He said, why would you do that? Why, you're going to reinvent the wheel? They invented steam. You don't want to use steam? So anyway, it is clear that the comments Abdu'l-Bahá makes at that time, for Iran at that time, and the kind of things he talks about, even China, things China is really wasn't listening. They were looking backwards. Of course, those things have changed. I mean, China is now a world power economy. At the time of Dubai, it wasn't. It was really weak. And then something happened. And Iran, of course, now scientifically and with all the things that they're doing, they finally have made a leap in terms of technology that they didn't make at the time. But Abdu'l-Bahá was speaking in 1875, you know. And I don't know about the timing of Baha'u'llah writing to the kings. This is his son, 31 years old. I don't know how Abdu'l-Bahá got all this information. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you're going to say it came from heaven. I mean, he speaks even of people like Voltaire. I mean, Voltaire, great French philosopher, was criticized the church because the abuses. I mean, even Abdu'l-Bahá speaks of the churches and the priests and all that, and he tells them that there's a lot of corruption, a lot of misbehaving. But Voltaire went as far as, I guess, I don't know the exact quotes, but they attacked almost the prophet Jesus himself. So Abdu'l-Bahá really is very harsh on him. He says because Voltaire wrote a lot. I remember even when I was studying French lit, I had 35 or I don't know 40 volumes of Voltaire. I mean, he's well known. And Abdu'l-Bahá says that because of what he says his writings are like children's playthings because what he said about Jesus. Imagine saying Voltaire, whatever he wrote is like, it's no good, it's like, oh, this useless. And yet everybody thinks that he's a giant philosopher and a literary man. Now, so there are two things that one should know that are at the beginning of the book and at the end of the book about what man is supposed to be doing in this world. He says, two things. The whole book is about, the way he writes, he is very like modern in the way he thinks about education and curriculum and about social organization and government and the way things should run but basically everything, the foundation of everything he says is basically spiritual. You can't operate if your heart is not in the right place. Otherwise you're just a crook. And politicians, they don't abide by these kind of principles, the way they run the world. But anyway, so he was trying to give them lessons as to the foundation of even order and politics, the intent. And so he says at the very beginning, he says, praise and thanksgiving be unto providence that out of all the realities in existence, he has chosen the reality of man and has honored it with two things: intellect and wisdom. Intellect and wisdom. Abdu'l-Bahá is speaking. He said intellect and wisdom. He says the two most luminous lights in either world. Everything he's saying in the book is about that. About being sharp thinker, awake and logical, and not go through imitation and all this the way of thinking that is kind of backwards, that leads you to become fanatic. Intellect and wisdom. And it says he has in every epoch cast on the mirror of creation new and wonderful configurations. Now that's Abdu'l-Bahā's language. Now, a little bit further down, when he tries to explain what is the purpose and what are we supposed to do as people working in this society, this billions of people, he says that the honor and distinction of the individual consists in this, that he among all the world's multitudes should become what should he become? A source of social good. That is what we're supposed to be doing. See, and this ties in with what the House of Justice is saying these days about how to get involved in society. You have to be social good. And that's what he's been doing all his life, helping, getting involved in having an input, a major input, and helping in whatever way possible, uplifting people. Now, at the end of the book, which is interesting, is to come back jumping like 100 pages, come back to the same thing. He says that happy the soul that shall forget his own good. You're not supposed to be thinking of your own good. We all think of our own good. We have to think of our own good somehow, but we have to. Otherwise, we won't be able to do anything. But he says, happy the soul that shall forget his own good, and like the chosen ones of God, vie with his fellows in service to the good of all. So anyway, we come back to the same thing, the conclusion. You've got to just think of others. Because in thinking of others, apparently you get benefits. Somehow it comes back to you. I mean, because God, it's like when it says when you teach, God gives you back. You know, like you give to the fund, God gives you. You give to Coca-Cola, God gives you back. You know, so when you don't think of yourself, I don't know if that means being detached or what, but basically when you think of others, somehow that's what you, because if everybody thinks of others, then we are going to be all right. If only one person thinks of others, we're finished. But if everybody thinks of others, relationships are going to be very different between people. The question is, are we applying those things? Now, that's the beginning and the last page of the book. Now, I said I cannot give you an analysis of the book, but I'm going to quote a few things from them because Abdu'l-Bahá refers to all kinds of things. I don't know how these quotes come from where. He just picks them up from God. Like Voltaire, he talks about historical incidents and gives details beyond, I mean, amazing details. I don't know where they come from. I mean, he was not close to libraries. He was a prisoner. He's 31 years old. Maybe somebody can enlighten me about that. Now, so anyway, so I started with the wisdom and intellect. And again, he's trying to get people out of being ignorant and barbarians. He says, how long shall we drift on the wings of passion and vain desire? How long shall we spend our days like barbarians in the depths of ignorance and abomination? You know, like he's asking people to wake up. He says, God has given us eyes that we may look about us at the world and lay hold of whatsoever will further civilization and the arts of living. So he was making a case that, listen, you know, you've got to, you can't stay, because he's going back to Iran the way it was, like, because he praises Iran years, like centuries ago, when it was at the top of the world. I guess he made mention that it probably was the best government in the world. And for some reason, like all civilizations, they go down. Same happened with the Jewish faith, and went down, and Christ came, and then went up, and then went down, and Muhammad came, and they went up and down. So it seems like when we are talking about the ups and downs and how, and he lays blame on the people that are trying to run these systems, these religions, that at one point when the manifestation of God comes fresh and gives all this power to the people, he brought Islam up to heaven, and Islam became a force of civilization. Thanks to Islam, Europe evolved. Europe was apparently way down. It is because of Muhammad, who came to a bunch of barbarians in the Middle East. He made them such phenomenal people and wise and scientists, mathematicians. I don't know. They even conquered most of North Africa, went even to Spain. And the European in the Middle Ages were so backward, they had to go to the Middle East to see those philosophers or thinkers or Muslims, and they brought all the knowledge from them, and that's how Europe, Abdu'l-Bahá says, became what it became because of them. So the prophets bring that energy to the world. And historically, it has been mismanaged mainly by the priests. So I mean, there's a big burden that is laid on the religious leaders of the world. And Abdu'l-Bahá doesn't, he says exactly that in his writings. Now, so again, he's trying to fight against what he calls man's utter most wretchedness. What is it? He says that they should live inert, apathetic, dull, involved only with their own base appetites. Now, I mean, I don't know. I would think that whatever he said for Iran and whatever he said then, and most certainly applies to the rest of the world and applies now. You know, Abdu'l-Bahá, even if you were just speaking of Iran, and he's trying to wake them up because it's open your eyes, he says, you know, nothing has changed. The situation, even though scientifically maybe we are now all very evolved and we all have computers and we have Zoom and we have iPhones and we have all that, I don't think that one can say that man is no longer, doesn't have inert, dull, and is not dealing with his basic base appetites. You know, what are those appetites? Anyway, he says, when he is thus, he says, he's being in the deepest ignorance and savagery, sinking lower than the brute beasts. Anyway, and then he says, he quotes the Quran. So he was referring to the Shah, because the Shah at that time, 1875, resolved to bring about the advancement of the Persian people, their welfare and security, and the prosperity of the country. So he basically, Abdu'l-Bahá, he said, hey, listen, I'm not going to give my name. I'm going to give you tips as to how you should do. And he was stressing many things, including education. And that was the basic. If you don't do education, every single part of the country, you know, you're finished, because ignorance is the worst thing against all possible development of civilization. I mean, Baha'u'llah says, man has been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. Only he's telling them, the secret is you've got to give education and, of course, spiritual education. Otherwise, it's all useless. Now, so and so he trying to explain to Iran at the time. He says, listen, oh people of Persia, look into the blossoming pages and tell of another day, a time long past. Read them and wonder. So see the great sight. Iran in the day was at the heart of the world. She was the bright torch flaming in the assemblage of mankind. Her power and glory shone out like the morning above the world's horizon, and the splendor of her learning cast its rays over east and west. Word of the widespread empire of those who wore her crown reached even the dwellers in the Arctic Circle, and the fame of the awesome presence of her King of Kings humbled the rulers of Greece and Rome. The greatest of the world's philosophers marveled at the wisdom of her government, and her political system became the model for all the kings of the four continents then known. She was distinguished among all peoples for the scope of her dominion. She was honored by all her praiseworthy culture and civilization. She was as the pivot of the world. She was the source of center of sciences and arts, the wellspring of great inventions and discoveries, the rich mine of human virtues and perfections, the intellect, the wisdom of individual members of this excellent nation dazzled the minds of other peoples, the brilliance and perceptive genius that characterized all this noble race aroused the envy of the whole world. Now, God chose the manifestation of God from this country.
Christian, are you describing Persia under Zoroastrian? When Zoroaster came?
Yes, Ali. I think that it goes back to, I guess, if the king Cyrus and way before, maybe Zoroaster, maybe before. But I mean, the point is that, like all civilizations, you know, they go up and down. Look at Greece, was up, and now you're going, yeah. So the point is that I'm no expert in Persia. I mean, you're talking to many Baha'is that in front of us here that are from Persian origin, and they can tell you But basically, Baha'u'llah came from Persia. So here Abdu'l-Bahá is trying to give them, trying to remind them of who they were. But this is now, we are now in a different time because apparently they sunk a bit because of the way they were mismanaged, or the way the clerics were running things, and the way they were not educating the masses. But the point is that the impact of what Baha'u'llah has given to the world and the way the teachings have touched, number one, the Persian believers. Those believers, you can see what Persian believers around the world that have come out of Iran, how sharp they are, how architecturally and medically and in all, so they're regaining as believers because of that the status of Persia at the time. But obviously the future is going to be great, even though now it is not quite what it will become. It just shows you he's trying to help them come back to their foundations and find that strength and that power they had and that glory they had. But there's some preconditions. You can't get there unless you do certain things, and you run things differently, and you give power to the people, and you create parliaments, and you give free education, and you basically apply all the Baha'i principles. But he's not teaching them the faith. He's not saying, I'm the son of Baha'u'llah and this is what you have to do. He's writing anonymously. He's saying, you don't know who I am. I'm just giving it to you so that you can see how you can do with it, because I saw the Shah is becoming so interesting these days in 1875. That didn't last very long because Abdu'l-Bahá never wrote the second volume to try to give them tips about how to run the country. So, and I don't know how this book that was written in Persian, how it circulated. I have no idea. Maybe some of our participants here can tell us more about what happened. But because it was published, I guess, in Bombay 20 years later, and then it was translated in English in 1910, and I don't know. But it was written for the Persians at the time, and I don't know how it circulated. I don't know who read it actually, exactly. So he says, this fairest of land. In the few pages later, he says, were not the people of Persia in days long gone the head and front of intellect and wisdom? Okay. Then he says, this fairest of lands was once a lamp streaming with the rays of divine knowledge, of science and art, of nobility and high achievement, of wisdom and valor. Today, because of the idleness and lethargy of her people, their torpor, their undisciplined way of life, their lack of pride, lack of ambition, her bright future has been totally eclipsed. Anyway, so he's trying to waken them up because he says, open your eyes. Now, so he says, today, by the grace of God and the spiritual influence of his universal manifestation, now we don't know. I don't know if he's talking about Baha'u'llah, talking about Muhammad, because he only quotes Muhammad in this book. He says, the fair-minded ruler of Iran, the Shah, has gathered his people into the shelter of justice, and the sincerity of the imperial purpose has shown itself in kingly acts. So he's trying to praise at least the intent of the king. But apparently, people have been opposed to him because they were accusing him of trying to imitate the West. And they said, we shouldn't. And Abdu'l-Bahá is trying to tell them, listen, there's nothing wrong with trying to imitate. If they invented something, just use it. Don't say, oh my God, they invented him, we're going to have to find something else. No, it is not against God, against the Prophet Muhammad to be able to imitate. If they have something they've done, you should use it. Because he realized that there were people opposed to progress in the country. I don't know who probably clerics and clergymen. He says, it is indeed strange that instead of offering thanks for this bounty, which truly derives from the grace of Almighty God, by arising as one in gratitude and enthusiasm and praying that these noble purposes will daily multiply, some, on the contrary, whose reason has been corrupted by personal motives and the clarity of whose perception has been clouded by self-interest and conceit, whose energies are devoted to the service of their passions, whose sense of pride is perverted to the love of leadership, have raised the standard of opposition and waxed loud in their complaints. Up until now, they blamed the Shah for not, on his own initiative, working for these people's welfare and seeking to bring about their peace and well-being. Now that he has inaugurated this great design, they have changed their tune. They say that these are newfangled methods and foreign isms, quite unrelated to the present needs and the time-honored customs of Persia. Others have rallied the helpless masses who know nothing of religion or its laws and basic principles, and therefore have no power of discrimination, and tell them that these modern methods are the practices of heathen peoples and are contrary to the venerated canon of true faith. And they add the saying, he who imitates a people is one of them. So again, Abdu'l-Bahá is trying to show them that there's progress. Progress is good. We have to follow that. Anyway, but at the one hand, he talks about that, but underlying that, he's saying that everything is based on religion, that true religion that is pure religion, the way it was taught by Jesus and Moses and Muhammad, not just the way they practice religion. Now, I'm not going to read you every single part of the book, but it really, like, everywhere the quotations are beyond belief, the kinds of things he says. The reason why nothing is progressing in that part of the world is because there is no public opinion. People because have not been fully educated, they can't even express themselves. He says, that the reason why there's a resistance is because there is an absence of a unified public opinion and the lack of zeal and resolve and devotion in the country's leaders. So obviously, nothing is changing for reasons that logically they should change, even though there's been a good initiative from the Shah. So, and then he says, close investigation will show that the primary cause of oppression and injustice, of unrighteousness, irregularity, and disorder is the people's lack of religious faith and the fact that they are uneducated. So that's the source of the problem. He says, at present, however, again, we are back in 1875. At present, however, because of their inadequate schooling, most of the population lack even the vocabulary to explain what they want. See how bad it is? This Abdu'l-Bahá is speaking now. People don't have the vocabulary to explain what they want because they haven't been given the proper tools to be able to say what they want. And that's oppression. So again, these people have not properly understood that man's supreme honor and real happiness lie in self-respect, in higher resolves and noble purposes, in integrity and moral quality, in immaculacy of mind. I mean, geez, nobody's listening. And the problem is that whatever we read here applies today. And if you don't do that, you can't change anything. You can't just have governments. I mean, what's the point? You can't govern because the people that are being governed, if they don't have this immaculacy of mind, and those governing don't have it either, you can't expect that you're going to have a social order based on what? You have a bunch of crooks running a world where people are just have base appetites. So what do? I mean, you're trying to teach people to become like Abdu'l-Bahá. They don't listen to you. They weren't listening to Abdu'l-Bahá at the time. They didn't listen to Baha'u'llah either. He wrote to the kings. I mean, the kings could have jumped and run to take a boat and go see a Baha'u'llah to change the way things. They don't care because people are busy dealing with amassing riches and living with their base appetites. I mean, not every single human, but if Abdu'l-Bahá talks about it and the prophets come to the world because something is wrong. I mean, profoundly wrong, but nobody listens. So you try to say, "Oh my God, I'm going to teach this person and give him this bread from heaven." Hopefully you jump up and accept it, and then, and he will become. He then will understand what Abdu'l-Bahá says when he says that man's supreme honor and real happiness, not just honor but happiness, lie in self-respect. Okay, you got some self-respect. You have high resolves. You have noble purposes. Or you have integrity and moral quality. And you have immaculacy of mind. Do you have all that? Do you want that? Not sure. I don't know. Like maybe something there, but not everything. They have rather imagined that their greatness, the people think, consists in the accumulation by whatever means may offer of worldly goods. So what is people doing in this world? Not everybody. Some people don't have enough to even accumulate anything. But I mean, those that can, they're going to be thinking, instead of being a source of social good, they got to accumulate. And of course, when you accumulate, at one point, when you die, you leave it behind, right? Because people take over. So you've done nothing. So how do you make people understand that man's honor is not in accumulating riches, or it's not about dealing with your base appetites? So we go further. So Baha'u'llah thinks, Abdu'l-Bahá is trying to tell people, listen, maybe those people that rule us, they should really try to live modestly, and be able to think of the good of the people. He says, because he was speaking of the station of the kings, if kings are becoming, he's thinking of Constantine, who became the first Christian king, who did amazing things for the world. But rare are those kings, can't find them. Maybe you can think of Mandela today, Mandela, or you think of those people. They're rare because they think of their own interest. So he says, then he comes down to the kings and the ministers. Next in rank are those eminent and honorable ministers of state and representatives who place the will of God above their own. Now the question is, out of maybe 1,000, how many do that? Maybe one. And whose administrative skill and wisdom in the conduct of their office raised the science of government to new heights of perfection. They shine in the learned world like lamps of knowledge. How many do you think they follow this? Their thinking, their attitudes, and their acts demonstrate their patriotism and their concern for the country's advancement. People think of the country's advancement. That's what they empower. Content with a modest stipend. How many people do you think would be content with a modest stipend? They consecrate their days and nights to the execution of important duties and the devising of methods to ensure the progress of the people. And the point is that if on top, nobody really cares and nobody is really as detached as they should be. And at the bottom, people don't even have a chance to express themselves because they don't even have the vocabulary and they don't really care. Then how can you have any kind of advancement in civilization? Now, the purpose, then we're back further down in the book. The purpose of the foregoing statements is to demonstrate at least this, that the happiness and greatness, the rank and station, and the pleasure and peace when individual have never consisted in his personal wealth, but rather in his excellent character, his high resolve, the breadth of his learning, and his ability to solve difficult problems. That's the honor of man. So it said, he speaks of wealth. He says, it should not be imagined that the writer's earlier remarks constitute the denunciation of wealth or a commendation of poverty. Wealth is praiseworthy in the highest degree if it is acquired by an individual's own efforts and the grace of God in commerce, agriculture, and art and industry. And if it expended for philanthropic purposes, then it's good to be wealthy. Above all, if a judicious and resourceful individual should initiate measures which would universally enrich the masses or the people, there could be no undertaking greater than this, and it would rank in the sight of God as a supreme achievement. For such a benefactor would supply the needs and ensure the comfort and well-being of a great multitude. Then he says, wealth is most commendable, provided what? He says, wealth is most commendable, provided that the entire population is wealthy. Now that's amazing. So it's okay, you guys want to be wealthy? Make sure everybody around you is wealthy too. Because you have one wealthy person and then in a sea of misery, and that's what's happening in many places in the world. Okay, so that's Baal Abdu'l-Bahá's, I like to say sense of humor, but I mean, it's true. It's making a true statement. Wealth, you have to be helping. You have to be philanthropy. You have to help people. All right. So you're getting the gist of this book. Abdu'l-Bahá is 31 years old, the guys. 31. Writing to the people of Persia. Say, open your eyes. Now, he tells so many stories in this book, incidents and stories, historical stories of, amazing. I don't know where these come from, but I mean, you have to read them. I can't take your time and read them. They're just amazing. So I'm going to skip it. Yeah.
Monsieur, what book is it? What's the name of it?
The Secret of Divine Civilization.
Ah, oui. Okay. D'accord. Usually.
Yeah. I mean, we have it all, but we don't read them. Like, I never picked it. I just picked it up just because we were talking about Abdu'l-Bahá when he was young, and I realized he was 31 years old when he wrote it. I mean,
I gave it to somebody yesterday that is not a Baha'i, and I said to him, read that book, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Listen, you did right. But I mean, I don't know the reaction will be. But it gives you basically, it's a blueprint of how to run governments, how to create a good civilization, because you've got your rules of the game. If the people running it are not really selfless and really wise and trying to help people, and the people listening to you don't want to improve their lives and they don't want to work and they just, then nothing's going to work. You're going to have zero progress. You're going to have zero civilization. You're going to have nothing. It's going to be like a horrible place to live in, whatever country that is. But I mean, he's talking about Persia, but obviously, if you're reading it, it's because we think that it may apply to this country and that one and that one and that one and that one. So, and again, his argument is that religion is the core, is the engine, because even though Voltaire attacked religion, had attacked Jesus and so on, they attack because the people that are running religions are also sometimes crooks. So Abdu'l-Bahá says, listen, you don't judge religion by the people that are running it, because you have to look at whoever gave you the religion, look at him, what he gave you. Don't look at the people that took it and try to organize it, because the organization is a problem. So we are going to the book now again. Now, of course, he's trying to say that if the Muslims had really organized themselves better and had really followed along the lines of what the Prophet told them, then every nation in the world would have accepted the faith of Muhammad. I guess at one point they must have deviated. Of course, they divided up soon after the death of Muhammad into the two sects, Shia and Sunni. And history shows that after that, I guess they did not follow exactly what the Prophet taught, because they got into all kinds of more politicized and ways of living that did not correspond to the message of Muhammad. Then Abdu'l-Bahá speaks of Luther and how the Protestant faith started. Now, I'm not going to go into the story of Luther. He speaks of the impact of the followers of Jesus, the few that accepted. He says there were very few, but the impact they had was amazing, even though they came to the Jewish people that had lost the initial faith that Moses had brought and they needed to be revived. Only 12 people accepted. He says that, in fact, 12 disciples and a few women truly became believers. And one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, apostatized from his faith, leaving 11. And Abdu'l-Bahá is trying to make sure that you understand there are only 11 left. After the ascension of Jesus to the realm of glory, these few souls stood up with their spiritual qualities and with deeds that were pure and holy, and they arose by the power of God and the life-giving breath of the Messiah to save all the peoples of the earth. Then all the idolatrous nations, as well as the Jews, rose up in their might to kill the divine fire that had been lit in the lamp of Jerusalem. So they attacked him and they killed him, crucified him, and tried to extinguish the light. But again, Constantine, the king, became the first Christian, and then thanks to him, the impact of Christianity in the world was what it created. Now, let's go. I'm not going to tell you the story of Muhammad Numan, son of Mundir, who was an Arab king in the day of ignorance, whose seat of government was the city of Hire. Now that's a detailed story of this person that was able to touch a king that was somehow had been drinking, and while he was drunk, he killed his best friends, two of them. He killed them both. And then when he woke up the next day, he was looking for them. They said, no, you ordered their killing. They're not here. So he built two monuments for them. And then he decided that that monument was going to be, it's called the smeared with blood documents and monuments. And he would celebrate, it's a very weird story. And it is the day of grace and the day of evil. And he would show up at these monuments, and the day of evil, if he was sitting there and his eyes fell upon somebody, that somebody would be killed immediately. Anyway, so, so one day the king was in a horse, was going, and he got lost, and so he didn't know where to go, and he went to a tent, and he saw somebody that was a modest Bedouin, I guess, and he asked for hospitality, and I guess they offered him milk and food and all that. And then they knew that the guy that was with the man that came was actually the king. So when things got bad, this gentleman that helped the king, he came to the city to see the king. I don't know why he went. And he came on the wrong day. He came on the day that the king said, if I see you, I kill you. And so he said, why did you come today? Because I had to kill you. He said, oh my God, I have to go back to my wife and tell her that you're going to kill me. Can't just do it. So he said, you have to give me somebody that is guaranteed that if you don't show up, I kill him. So I guess he's pointed to somebody that says, okay, I'll accept to be the one that guarantees the safety. So anyway, the point is that he came back the day that he promised to come back, never came back. So the king was about to kill the guy that promised to be the one that guaranteed his life. And just when he's about to kill him, apparently he shows up. And he explains to the king why he honored his word by coming, knowing that he was going to be killed. And it turns out the guy wanted to know, why are you like this? And he explained that I am a follower of Jesus. And, and so that's the end of the story. Then the king accepted the faith of Christ, and the king destroyed the monuments and changed his life. Okay. He's trying to explain that Abdu'l-Bahá says, observe how one individual, and he a man of the desert, to outward seeming unknown and of no station, because he showed forth one of the qualities of the pure in heart, was able to deliver this proud sovereign and the great company of others from the dark night of unbelief and guide them into the morning of salvation, to save them from the perdition of idolatry and bring them to the shores of the oneness of God, and to put an end to practices of the sort which blight a whole society and reduce the peoples to barbarism. One must think deeply over this and grasp its meaning. So you guys are invited by Abdu'l-Bahá right now here to think deeply and grasp the meaning, saying, listen, you just know how you talk to people that you might change the way people are. That's it. That each one has his own, the way one speaks and the way one shares the writings, like you did with giving the book to this gentleman. But you have to coach them, you have to follow them to make sure they understand, because they might, sometimes people read stuff and they don't quite get it and they get discouraged because it's not quite what they wanted to hear. But the point is that there is power in the writings, because all the things we receive from God, if we believe, they have power. The words have power. That's why we should use those words. We should not use too much our words, because our words are explanatory things. We use words to explain. We become interpreters of the faith of God. And that has no effect. That has no purpose. That doesn't help. That's like becoming Wikipedia. What they need is eyes looking into somebody's soul and projecting into that soul the words of God through you, so long as you have been touched by the word of God and you have become almost like a saint. Now, we are no saints, but you've got to be a saint, because that's the purpose. The purpose of the faith is for everybody to become a saint. Why would be just the apostles of Jesus and the few women around Jesus that became touched by because everybody is supposed to be touched the same way. Because if you aren't, you can't have no effect. People think you're a member of a club. You just call it a Baha'i club. People don't need clubs. We're all parts of all kinds of clubs. This is supposed to be a transformative faith that makes you like shine. That's the whole point. I'm sorry, I'm going around, turning around things, but I'm trying to sort of.
Let me ask you.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What was the name of the king that you were talking about?
The king, the king. I guess this is before the coming of Muhammad. I don't know where the story came from. Abdu'l-Bahá got the story, and the hero, the guy that was a Christian, his name is Hanzala, and
Hanzala, what page in the book?
46, 47, 48, 49.
Okay. Because if you don't know the story, how can you explain?
No, I know. You're going to read it. You're going to understand better than I did. But his name was Numan. Numan is the king.
The king.
Or a leader, yeah.
Which country? Which country?
In Persia somewhere. He was the
Persia.
No, I don't know. Maybe Arabia. I don't know. Not Persia. He was the son of Mundir the Lakmite, an Arab king in the days of ignorance before Muhammad came. The government was the city of Hire. Now, I don't know how Abdu'l-Bahá came up on this story. I have no idea. Maybe you can tell me. So anyway, that's the guy that became drunk. And the guys, most of these people, they kill. They love to kill. And then Abdu'l-Bahá says, my heart aches. Now, why does his heart ache? He says, for I note with intense regret that the attention of the people is nowhere directed towards that which is worthy of this day and time. So again, we come back to the fact that people just don't seem really focused on, there are some that are really worried about the world. You see these people, young people and so on, they're really worried about climate change, and the world is going to be sinking, if we don't stop certain behaviors, the things are going to melt, the sea level is going to rise, some cities are going to disappear. Forget about this pandemic right now. I guess it's just an avant-goût for what could be coming. This is just one lousy virus, okay? One little virus, tiny, that somehow, for some reason, escaped from some creature and jumped into another creature, and the way these things they passed to other people was transmitted to number 2, and number 2 went to number 3 and number 4, and the next thing you know, every country is wearing masks and they're dying. I mean, it's horrible. It's not finished because we are fighting for a vaccine and all. But you know, who's to tell that we're not going to get the number 2 coronavirus or number 3? I mean, if it happens once, it can happen maybe a million times. So it's horrible. So the question is all this trying to make people become like different and becoming aware of things and cooperating and listening to Abdu'l-Bahá saying about changing the way they are profoundly? Because if you don't, nothing is going to change. Nothing. Because you can run perfect economies, you can run perfect governments, perfect systems, but if the people running it don't have the heart and really don't think of others, you know, with deep detachment, and the people that are the population that are sort of maybe not as educated as should be, if they don't wake up to understand the responsibilities of how to be of service to others and how to be good to others. Abdu'l-Bahá says you have to think of others, social good. Then you've got nothing. Then you can't build a world. It's gonna be awful. And plus, forget about that. I mean, in addition, there's racism. People think they're superior because man thinks maybe he's superior to woman, or this white is superior to the black, or the black is superior to the other black. I mean, racism is not just black and white. It's within Africa, there's people that think they're better than others. If you are from the north of Africa, you think you're better than the south people from. If you are from this country, you think you're a different tribe. Even within a country, there's racism, there's tribalism. Tribes, they don't have to be colors, they're the same color. They just think you're better. In Rwanda, the Hutus killed the Tutsis. They're all Christians. 800,000 died with machetes. Yeah. And I mean, I'm going to go back and the history of.
And they are all black.
Yes, very.
And they are all black.
Yes, of course. That's the point. So the point is that people are just sort of, they're just, you know, problems. Now, so Baha'u'llah Abdullah says, my heart aches because people are just not focusing on what they should focus, you know. Again, Abdu'l-Bahá was going to write the second book. I guess he didn't write the second book because he gave up. He realized he couldn't do it anything. So let's see. He says, today we have closed our eyes to every righteous act and have sacrificed the abiding happiness of society to our own transitory profit. Anyway, so we are all criticizing others. Now, let me see if I can come to. Now, Abdu'l-Bahá attacked, I don't know, strong, but he criticized the civilization in Europe because I guess it was becoming, it was getting far away from God. He says, all the peoples of Europe, notwithstanding their vaunted civilization, sink and drown in this terrifying sea of passion and desire. And this is why all the phenomena of their culture come to nothing. Because as they're coming with this great civilization, he says, you're building arms. You're trying to have neighborly friends with your neighbors, but you're building arms and you're killing people. I mean, this came a few years before they colonized Africa. And they split the continent between all the governments of Europe, between Belgium and France and England and Spain and Portugal. And they took advantage of the country, of the continent. And before that, of course, there was slavery at the hand of very profound Christian leaders. Now, so again, he condemns he says the peoples of Europe have not advanced to the higher planes of moral civilization. See? Yeah. They are not part of this divine civilization. They have not advanced to the higher planes of moral civilization, as their opinions and behavior clearly demonstrates. Notice, for example, how the supreme desire of European governments and peoples today is to conquer and crush one another. And how, while harboring the greatest secret repulsion, they spend their time exchanging expressions of neighborly affection, friendship, and harmony. That's Europe for you. That's in 1875. You can apply today if you want to or not, I don't know. And it says there is a well-known case for the ruler who is fostering peace and tranquility, at the same time devoting more energy than the warmongers to the accumulation of weapons and the building up of a larger army on the grounds that peace and harmony can only be brought about by force. So each day they invent a new bomb. They got to invent a new bomb. They can't keep the old one. I mean, you invent a new phone and you invent a new car, so you got to invent a new bomb. And then the government must abandon the obsolete arms and begin producing the new ones. And the staggering cost of all this, Abdu'l-Bahá says, must be borne by the hapless masses. They're the ones bearing the brunt. Now, then he's talking about the Franco-Prussian War in the year 1870. It was reported that 600,000 people died, broken and beaten up. Abdu'l-Bahá, this is 1875. We're not talking about the Holocaust now. But see, the path is the path of destruction. So where is the moral civilization here? Only too many such instances are available to demonstrate the fact that Europe is morally uncivilized. I don't know if you want to quote that one, but that's what the book says. I'm going to read it again. Only too many such instances are available to demonstrate the fact that Europe is morally uncivilized. So he doesn't want to develop too much of the point. He just said. And he talks about the Germans and the French and this and that. And then there's a passage here, this very well-known passage that was translated by Shawki Effendi, because this book was translated by Marcia Gale. But this passage here that you must remember, it's a very famous one. It says, true civilization will unfurl its banner in the midmost heart of the world, whenever a certain number of its distinguished and high-minded sovereigns, the shining exemplars of devotion and determination, shall, for the good and happiness of all mankind, arise with firm resolve and clear vision to establish the cause of universal peace. They must make the cause of peace the object of general consultation and seek by every means in their power to establish a union of the nations of the world. They must conclude a binding treaty and establish a covenant, the provisions of which shall be sound, inviolable, and definite. They must proclaim it to all the world and obtain for it the sanction of all the human race. Now, I'm not going to read anymore, but you get the gist of it. That's the plan. He's writing to Persia, but he's pointing out, this is fine, but you guys, this is something else. It's universal peace. No good will come unless all the sovereigns get together, but they're not getting together. They didn't listen to Baha'u'llah when he wrote to them. They're not going to listen to Abdu'l-Bahá when he wrote to them.
No, let me remind you.
Yes.
They have come together.
Yes.
Very much. I've shown pictures of all the presidents in Brazil that have come together to talk about one common problem.
Yes.
So they did it, but they stopped it, But remember when Becker was working with Reagan, was it Papa Reagan? He was sent to visit all the presidents of the world to come together before this picture was taken. It's Becker that did all this work, went to for 5-6 years. He visited all the presidents of the world to make them come and consult on problem of the world. So this happened, I like when we say that it doesn't happen, and I like to remind people that it did happen. We stop, we start again, because it did happen a little, not enough, not enough to really change the world. But the proof is that where we are right now, but that idea, because we Baha'i talks a lot about Baha'u'llah and all these things, that idea has really started to really develop
That's right.
with the politician of the world.
That's
Now
right.
you have all the singers that start singing beautiful song like "We Are One World," we know we are all together. And yesterday, Mrs. Gina talked about her books, and she said something that really appeased, really make me really more patient in front of the problem of the world. She said everything has a time. Look at the papillon. The papillon is growing, and it takes two steps before one day it starts flying and show his beauty. Now, these two steps are not seen to the eyes of man. So we don't see everything that's happening right now because it's happening this and this and there and there. But one day it will all come together and it will be clear.
Yes.
And the world will change.
Yes.
So we have to keep positive
That is correct.
attitude,
That
you
is
know.
I agree with you. I mean, I don't know. I'm just quoting Abdu'l-Bahá is speaking to the world in 1875. Now, this is like over a century ago. But again, when you look at the way the world is evolving, when Abdu'l-Bahá says, I'm just quoting, he says, the apparatus of conflict will, as preparations go at the present rate, reach the point where war will become something intolerable to mankind. Now, this is Abdu'l-Bahá speaking.
Voilà.
5. He's telling you the apparatus of conflict.
So no, right now we don't realize what is war. We still don't have the idea of the sadness and the breaking of country that war brings, And so, and then the people, the politician who has the possibility of making decision to change that, they don't have the vision, you see. But one day we will fight so much, it will be so dangerous that we will not be able to fight anymore.
Yes.
And then finally we'll understand.
Now,
Because that's the way man is.
now again, the message that Abdu'l-Bahá is giving here and that we have to convey is in this statement in page 73. Now, I'm just advancing a little bit so I can cover at least some ground. It says that it is certain that the greatest of instrumentalities for achieving the advancement and the glory of man, the supreme agency for the enlightenment and the redemption of the world, is love and fellowship and unity among all the members of the human race. Now follow me.
Yeah.
Nothing can be effected in the world, not even conceivably, without
Oui.
unity and agreement.
Oui.
The perfect means for engendering fellowship and union is true religion. See, that's the thesis. The thesis is you've got to have peace and unity, but you cannot get that unless you have true religion. So,
Religion. We don't believe in God, then you cannot be trusted.
the true religion, that's the basic point, is that we've got to stress to people that we believe in one common faith. We have to understand, people, that we believe in all faiths, that it is one true faith that gets
All.
revealed. The light shines differently now. It's more intense, but it is the same one. It's not like a different one. So you don't deny, because
Mhm.
that every prophet is part of the same process.
Knowledge, the same spiritual knowledge, the
Yes.
same spiritual education.
Yes, yes,
It's like when you go to school,
yes.
it's one education.
But you've got to get rid of the layers that people have put on religion, and this control by new systems and the clergymen that have not been given by the prophet themselves. And that's the point. Is that the point is that true religion, not just religion, but true religion. Now, so we come back to continue doing it, and then I have to stop at one point and let you guys speak. Now, I'm trying to give you a taste of the book so that you can actually pick it up and read it and reread it, because he gives a lot of historical details, and he's quoting right and left. He quotes Matthew. He's quoting right and left, but the quotes come from Muhammad. He speaks of Jesus that brought the sacred law on the basis of moral character and complete spirituality. And for those who believed in him, he delineated a special way of life which constitutes the highest type of action on this earth. So now people toppled him. People didn't want to hear that. Again, so whenever the prophets open their mouth and they give you teachings to transform their lives, people don't want to hear it, and they get rid of them, and people just don't listen. So that's why, God keeps sending them. Now, let's see. It says, the people were, when Christ brought his teachings, the people said that one demonstration of the excellent character of the Christians at the time, in those days, was their dedication to charity and good works, and the fact that they founded hospitals and philanthropic institutions. For example, the first person to establish public clinics throughout the Roman Empire, where the poor, the injured, and the helpless receive medical care, was the Emperor Constantine. I told you about Constantine. The great king was the first Roman ruler to champion the cause of Christ. So, again, there comes a time when a ruler accepts the faith of the manifestation of God, and things just take off differently. And this will happen also in the Baha'i revelation. Now, okay. So, he says that before Muhammad, the practice of the tribes were awful. He says that observe the influence on material civil situations of that training which is inculcated by the true educator. Here were tribes so benighted and untamed that during the period of the Jahiliyyah, the period of ignorance, would bury their 7-year-old daughters alive, an act which even an animal, let alone a human being, would hate and shrink from, but which they in their extreme degradation consider the ultimate expression of honor and devotion to principle. And this darkened people, thanks to the manifest teachings of the great personage, advanced to such a degree that after they conquered Egypt, Syria, and Damascus, Mesopotamia, and Iran, they came to administer single-handedly whatever matters were of major importance in 4 main regions of the globe. The Arabs excelled all the people of the world in science and the arts, in industry and inventions, in philosophy, government, and moral character. And truly the rise of this brutish and despicable element in such a short interval to the supreme heights of human perfection is the greatest demonstration of the rightfulness of the Lord Muhammad's prophethood. So, trying to explain that the prophets, when they come to the world, they transform civilizations that were barbaric into giants. And again, he's trying to awaken the people of Iran at that time to turn towards the new principles so that they can advance and they can become a source of civilization at the time. Now, I'm getting close to the end here. The purpose of these references is to establish the fact that the religions of God, again, see, the same theme comes back again. The religions of God are the true source of the spiritual and material perfections of man, and the fountainhead for all mankind of enlightenment, beneficial knowledge. If one observes the matter justly, it will be found that all the laws of politics are contained in these few and holy words. And then he quotes the Quran, but then there's a lot of quotations of the Quran here. So I'm not going to go into those quotations because he quotes only the Quran. Sincerity is the foundation stone of faith. That is, a religious individual must disregard his personal desires and seek whatever way he can wholeheartedly to serve the public interest, and it is impossible for a human being to turn aside from his own selfish advantages and sacrifice his own good for the good of the community, except through true religious faith. For self-love is knitted to the very clay of man, and it is not possible that without any hope of a substantial reward he should neglect his own present material good. The individual, however, who puts his faith in God and believes in the words of God because he is promised and certain of a plentiful reward in the next life, and becomes more benefit as compared to the abiding joy and glory of future planes of existence are nothing to him, will for the sake of God abandon his own peace and profit and freely consecrate his heart and soul to the common good. That's what Abdu'l-Bahá says. Now, so, universal benefits derived from the grace of the divine religions, for they lead their true followers to sincerity of intent, to high purpose, to purity of and spotless honor, to surpassing kindness and compassion, to the keeping of their covenants when they have covenanted, to concern for the rights of others, to liberality, to justice in every aspect of life, to humanity and philanthropy, to valor, and to unflagging efforts in the service of mankind. The purpose of these statements, said Abdu'l-Bahá, is to make it abundantly clear that the divine religions, the holy precepts, the heavenly teachings are the unassailable basis of human happiness, and that the peoples of the world can hope for no real relief or deliverance without this one great remedy. The panacea must, however, be administered by a wise and skilled physician, for in the hands of an incompetent, all the cures that the Lord of man have ever created to heal man's ills could produce no health, and would, on the contrary, only destroy the helpless and burden the hearts of the already afflicted. I am going to stop here now because it's going to get very long and you already got the point. So here is Abdu'l-Bahá, 31 years old, sending this to the people of Persia. And if you all turn to that book, among all the books of Abdu'l-Bahá, you see the writing is different than the writing you hear when Abdu'l-Bahá, when you read the Paris talks in London or the promulgation of universal peace. Here's Abdu'l-Bahá almost writing like a thesis, trying to prove to the world that the religion is the basis of the happiness of mankind, and that there's a way of thinking logically and being able to build a society on very modern principles that do not conflict with belief in God. Whereas many religions believe, they tend to believe that somehow the progress is bad and that the science is no good and so. So, dear friends, I prefer to put an end to my presentation.